Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley speaking to you from Washington. It's the 9th of December, 2011, as we tape here on a Friday afternoon. Two big world crisis stories. One, the increasing acrimony of the U.S.-Russia clash, and on the other side, the continuous U.S.-British attack on the euro, with the Cameron regime in Great Britain, perfide Albion, showing its true colors, proving once again General de Gaulle was right. Britain, under this finance oligarchy at least, doesn't want to be part of Europe. British working people might have different ideas, but the finance oligarchs of the City of London don't want to be part of Europe, and they don't want the Euro-Tobin, which is the underlying issue here, the tax on speculative finance and other regulations. And therefore, Cameron has essentially led the British several steps out of Europe. It's a dangerous move, but it's one that opens up some potential for us, and I'll try to address that in a coming segment here with the idea of what to do about it, because we have people listening in most countries in Europe. But let's look, first of all, at the situation regarding Russia. You'll recall last week I tried to be as vehement as I could, that the Anglo-American mad dog imperialists were going to essentially shoot the works. They were going to try every trick in their book to destabilize Russia. They are obsessed with Putin. They hate and fear Putin like nobody else on this planet. Putin is the key man. He is the heart and soul and fist and nerve of the world resistance against the Wall Street and the City of London and their imperialist apparatus. So Putin is the key guy. And I urge people in the world, add to the strength of the Russian and Putin resistance. Now, that doesn't mean uncritical. It means critical. It means things like dump Kudrin. Fortunately, that was done. And now, dump Medvedev, the big loser of these elections. But let me just, before we get into the details of Russia, remember that the fundamental problem right now is not in Russia. It is in London and, above all, in Washington. The U.S.-British ruling elite is bonkers. They are crazy. They are mad as hatters. They are mad as March hares. They have gone off the deep end. This is a kind of a terminal crisis, I think, in many ways. Several years ago, in 2006, for example, in the summertime, I told Reuters in a dispatch that went around the world that Washington was gripped by a war psychosis. That was under Bush, Cheney, and the neocons in their desperation of the last days of neocon Pompeii back in 06, 07, 08. Now this is slightly different. This is now not so much a psychosis of war. It is a destabilization psychosis. It is the manic ambition to drive home the Arab Spring, the Arab awakening, everything that has been done since WikiLeaks, the CIA limited hangout operation, the CIA front called WikiLeaks, since they released their document dump just about a year ago, right, targeting, as you remember, Ben Ali, Mubarak, Gaddafi, Assad, Putin, Berlusconi, Karzai, Kirchner of Argentina, Maliki of Iraq, everybody on the CIA enemies list was hit hard in that thing. But nobody, no politician in U.S., Britain, or Israel was touched up at all, and the State Department has since acknowledged this through the mouth of Alec Ross. Since the WikiLeaks document dump, we've had this wave of destabilization. It's the CIA, of course. It's the State Department. It's the National Endowment for Democracy, made up of the two bipartisan zombie twins, the International Republican Institute and the International Democratic Institute, or whatever they call themselves in detail. But the Democrats and the Republicans united in the struggle to overthrow other governments and bring on oligarchies on the U.S. financier model. This is what has been ravaging the world, and I warned you very early on, right? There's a tsunami of destabilizations. Ben Ali, January, Mubarak, February, and then it's sort of the calendar went wrong. They couldn't keep to their schedule. They wanted Gaddafi out in March, probably Assad out in April or May. They couldn't do it, and nevertheless, they keep trying. They keep trying in Yemen. They keep trying in Syria. And as I warned you, they think they can ride this all the way to Tehran. They would say, well, we tried in June of 2009 around that election. That didn't work for us, but we're not going to quit. We're going to keep trying. We're going to try to ride this all the way to Tehran, all the way to Beijing, all the way to Moscow. And that is what they believe. They are crazy. They do not have the basis in these countries as far as I can see, based on anything that one can observe. But there's always more than meets the eye when you're dealing with covert operations. That's why they're covert. Important now is not even what comes out of the mouth of Obama or Hillary or Miss Rice as she hisses her way through the UN Security Council, but it's rather what's going on in the covert realm and what kind of intelligence warfare is going on. So the obvious ploy, and this was, I called it to your attention, as soon as it became known that Putin was going to return to the presidency of Russia, I warned you, based on some Russian friends that had pointed this out to me, that there would be attempts to destabilize Russia as part of these elections. Because the Anglo-Americans regard the return of Putin to power for 2 6-year terms, so 12 more years of Putin and maybe more. They regard this as intolerable. They're willing to go way out on the limb of destabilization, economic warfare, interference in internal affairs, virtual acts of war against Russia now. This is a big deal. This is not some defenseless little country. This is a huge place, unconquered, never overrun, at least not in recent years, with therefore a different mentality than some of the places we've been dealing with so far. Proud nation, fiercely independent, let's put it that way. And Putin, right? Probably the most capable leader in the world. Again, not perfect, and we'll be pointing out the imperfections in a constructive way. So we've now had this election, and true to what I was basically expecting, the Anglo-Americans have gone bonkers trying to make this election somehow into a means of destabilizing Russia. Remember that one of the key tricks when you want to have a color revolution is you've got to have fake polls. You've got to have fake public opinion polls that prove that the vote count, prove in quotes, that the vote count that is published by the government is not what the people really wanted. The people really wanted the NATO puppet, the IMF puppet, right? What was his name? Mousavi in Iran or whoever it was that didn't make it. So something like this is now in the offing. Now, the big lie coming from the Anglo-American media this week is that the loss of seats by United Russia, the fact that the United Russia Party, the party to which Putin belongs, which he's the head of, but that the loss of the 77 seats down to 238 seats, which is just about half of the State Duma, still quite respectable for any party in the world, right? Most of these parties, central, Germany, places like this, Italy, they don't have a majority of half, right? These are coalition governments. But in the case of Russia, they say, oh, if you lose 77 seats down to 238 or half of the Duma, you have lost big. Well, wait a minute. Who lost big? Whose name was on the ballot, dear Anglo-American commentators? It was Medvedev's name. This is the Medvedev list that was defeated. This was a rejection of Medvedev and his weak, appeasing, inconsequential policies by the Russian people. Putin is not touched by this. Putin was not on the ballot. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.